Hello, and you are listening to the Tech Tonic Podcast, episode 6 of season 2. You're joining me again, Darwin and Jeevan, in today's podcast. Again, there's no guest because we're still in the midst of pandemic and numbers are not very encouraging in the past few weeks, or at least in the past few days, actually. Yeah?
Yeah, it's been kind of on the high side of things.
Yeah, and we missed one episode last week. Obviously, if you have been keeping close to the podcast, and we apologize for that. There's just a lot on the plate right now, and yeah, we kind of missed it. Anyway, we're trying a new format, basically to try to tell you guys a little bit more about the show. And if you have any feedback on the show, you let us know on our Facebook channels. Follow us on all our social media channels on Facebook, on Twitter, LinkedIn, even Instagram. We are all Tech and TV across the board, and do let us know about what you think of the show, about what you want to hear from us on the show. We also write news. Well, we have articles and visit our website at www.techand.tv. Now that we get that out of the way, last week is quite happening. A few things actually happened last week when we were not on air, right? Actually, yeah, a lot of things happened. Things like Lenovo, they actually announced their new gaming smartphone, and that's supposed to rival the Asus ROG Phone 5 that we already have in Malaysia. Haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it looks funky. The Lenovo phone?
The Dual Legion Phone 2 Dual. Or is
Dual
it Dual
2? Yeah, the Legion Phone Dual 2. Apparently.
It looks kind of chunky though.
It looks funny.
It looks very, very funny and chunky.
Yeah, but it has 2 batteries and apparently 2 fans to keep it cool, to keep the Snapdragon 888 cool. And apparently it will come with a 720Hz, not refresh rate screen, more like a response rate. That means it's supposed to be the fastest responding touchscreen in the world. Later on,
so
we won't know yet until we see it, you know?
Yeah.
Nvidia also announced a new CPU. It won't be a consumer CPU. You won't see it in our PCs. It's more for supercomputers. So Intel's got something to worry about.
AMD as well.
Yeah, AMD as well. Anyway, other than that, Acer launched their Nitro 5 gaming PC with crazy specs. You can spec it up with AMD's Ryzen 9, and you can get it at up to NVIDIA's GeForce RTX 3080, which is quite unheard of for
It's basically a super gaming PC.
Yeah, it's not an entry-level gaming PC anymore.
Yeah, the Nitro 5 has just been like upgraded to the moon.
Yeah, so it's basically Nitro 5 on steroids.
Yeah, and the new design actually looks really good.
And then Sony also launched something very, very dear to our hearts, which is the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. And
Xperia
you
5
still get
Mark III.
Yeah, and 5 Mark III. But the Xperia 1 Mark III, I think we're right in saying this, is the first time ever that you see a 4K HDR display on a smartphone that refreshes at 120 Hz, like their Bravia TV. Wow.
Yeah, and one thing I have to give to Sony, they are actually creating a very creator niche with their phones. I mean, look at what we have in the market. You don't have anything that rivals their phone when it comes to creators.
Correct. And I think the Xperia 1 would be one of the greater smartphone products that we would love to own, but at the same time, there's not going to be any phone plans on it, so it's going to be expensive. We expect that.
Yeah. It's going
to be
very
announced
expensive.
Pricing yet. Yeah. They haven't announced the pricing just yet. But anyway, DJI also released something called the DJI Air 2S, which is kind of a follow-up to the DJI Mavic Air 2. It's a bit more improved. It's got a 4K, not 4K this sensor. It used to have a 4K sensor. Now it has a 5.4K video sensor and a 20 megapixel photography capability. Am I saying that right? I feel like I'm not saying that right. But yeah, it's supposed to be able to fly up to 12 kilometers away. I don't know why you want to fly 12 kilometers away from your location and whatnot. But it can transmit full HD videos from 12 kilometers away. That's what they say. I don't recommend you do that because it's quite dangerous. At the same time,
doesn't it only have like 30 minutes of flight time?
Correct. But if you fly fast enough, you can reach about 5 to 6 kilometers at one go. I don't know. It's got about 31 minutes of flight time. That's what they say. But anyway, it is for sale in Malaysia already. I forgot how much is it. Let me check. It is 4,499 ringgit. And if you buy the Fly More combo, it will be 5,975 ringgit. This episode of Tech Tonic is brought to you by the Acer Nitro 5 gaming laptop. The Acer Nitro 5 packs AMD's latest Ryzen 7 5800H and for the first time ever, the NVIDIA GeForce RTX series graphics card. Pre-order yours from the 27th to 29th April at 4,899 ringgit onward and receive free gifts worth up to 967 ringgit. For more information on the Acer Nitro 5, visit Acer's Facebook page or the link included in the description. Okay, that was last week. And today, on Monday, this morning, we saw something that was kind of leaked from Samsung. And not much information has been going on around about it, but we kind of suspected that they might be working on something like this, right? And it looks like they're working on a foldable tablet.
Which I think only makes sense given how they've been experimenting with the Z Fold.
Yeah. And at the same time, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2 and the Z Flip has really, really dropped in prices. Not prices, sorry. You want to guess how much the Galaxy Z Flip is?
If I remember correctly, I think it's less than 7K now.
Oh, no. It's not just less than 7K. It's listed on Samsung Malaysia right now for 3,999 ringgit. That is the Z Flip.
Is the Z Flip?
Yes, this is the Z Flip, yes.
Okay. I thought it was a Z Fold. I was like, wait, what?
No. The Z Fold 2 currently on the Malaysia website is listed at 6,999 ringgit, which is a whole 1,000 ringgit cheaper from its actual retail price when it was launched, last year, I think?
Z Fold 2, end of last year.
Yeah, and even the Galaxy Z Flip is not exactly an old device. It's now 3,999 ringgit.
Yeah.
Mind you, there is no replacement model for the Z Flip just yet, okay? But what I'm reading here is that the only version that you're getting from the Z Flip at 3,999 ringgit is the LTE version. So you're not getting the 5G version of the Z Flip just yet at this point, okay? For some reason, I can't actually select the 5G option on the Malaysian website. They probably have delisted it or something like that. But what do you think of the price, Jivan?
Really makes sense at this point, especially for the Z Flip.
Mm-hmm.
So considering it's an 875, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. It's still a flagship, yes.
Yeah, it's still a flagship, but a little bit on the old end with the processor.
Mm-hmm.
But it still makes a lot of sense to buy at 4K, especially if you're looking for something that is compact. And like I said in my review, it allowed me to actually disconnect from looking at my phone all the time.
Yeah. And you have to remember that this was a phone that was sold for 6,000 something ringgit at its launch, right?
Yeah, nearly 7 if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So our subject today is about basically foldable smartphones and even tablets lah. Like, does it even make sense? Because both of us have reviewed foldable devices. Jeevan has reviewed the first Samsung Galaxy Fold and the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip. I reviewed the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2. And to be honest, I kind of like the idea of the Z Fold 2, but at the same time, if anyone wants to buy a daily driver, that can work with them for their whole day and beyond 5 years, I actually find it hard to recommend anything from the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2 or the Z Flip lineup. That's to me anyway. What do you think, Jeevan?
I actually am on the same page when it comes to that, because to me, I feel like the technology is still experimental. You don't have solid footing on what the offering is just yet. Yes, you can get a 8-inch, 7-inch screen from a 5-inch phone, but at the same time, how are you going to maximize the use of it? If you're saying that there's an S Pen or something of that sort that comes with the larger screen, it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it also brings up the question of whether these foldables are actually durable enough to last.
Yeah,
I think both of us change phones once in 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we had the Note 5, it lasted us 4 years, and
about
you don't
before mine died.
Yeah,
was it a Note 5?
and you
No,
don't
wait, no, that
have-
was a Note 2.
Yeah, so you have that peace of mind that these phones actually last. In
Mhm.
fact, my Note 5 is still usable.
Yep.
But when it comes to foldables, you have the unknown of how long the screen will last, how long
Yeah.
the hinge mechanism will last,
Yeah.
and whether you're going to have problems halfway through where you're going to have a line of pixels on your screen where you won't be able to see anything.
Yeah, and that was, I think, my biggest fear when I was using the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2, right? And while it's gorgeous, right? The screen is gorgeous, and compared to the Z Fold, to the last time I saw it, the Z Fold 2 actually has less crease than the Z Fold. Not the Z Fold, the Galaxy Fold, right? Especially where the folding is. And it feels like the whole product is made a little bit better, a little bit more solid, and just more durable in that sense. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I do not really want to keep flipping the phone in and out. Like, I don't want to keep unfolding the phone and folding it and unfolding it and folding it and unfolding it and folding it. Although they say that they have tested it up to 100,000 times, and other machines or other people have actually tested the stuff up to 100,000 times of folding and folding, you still get the feeling that you don't really want to do that too often.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think especially when we first remember that first fold of the Z Fold, the
That was
original
scary.
Galaxy Fold,
Yeah.
both of us literally just froze because of the sound the screen made when we folded it.
Yeah, so when we were unboxing that thing, the first fold was probably the most painful fold that we ever had to do.
Oh my god.
We're not
I
Jerry
still
Riggs
remember
everything.
the sound.
With-
I still remember the sound.
Yeah, because it was just a crack, and we're like, oh, is that supposed to do that? I thought,
And we hadn't even turned it on yet at that point.
and I remembered feeling that the Samsung Galaxy Fold has a very, very odd, latch. Not latch. The hinge mechanism was very weird because you couldn't lock it in place, and it was just basically flailing around if
Yeah.
you don't actually open it fully. And I think they fixed that on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip, and they brought that same mechanism to the Z Fold 2, which is nice.
Yeah.
I like that change, and it makes
I
it feel
actually-
more like the communicator.
Yeah, and I actually think that it made a lot of sense on the Z Flip because
Mhm.
when I was reviewing it, I was basically doing video calls with my cousin in UK,
Mhm.
and I would just leave the Z Flip there and
Yeah, and you
just angle it so that she could see me and I could see her, and that's it. Like, you
yeah,
don't
and you
need
could do the
a
same on
stand.
the Z Fold 2, right? So that made a lot of sense. Like
Yeah,
propping it up like a laptop, like yeah, it's nice. That made a lot of sense. But
yep.
at the same time, would you use the phone for the next 5 years though?
That's the thing. I don't think so, because after a while, aside from the flip, the fold itself, after a while, I kind of got irritated with it, but I didn't use the
Mm-hmm.
Z Fold 2. The Z Fold
Um,
1, I got irritated with it because it was so hard to open, and
uh-huh.
the front screen was basically useless.
Right. So they fixed that on the Z Fold 2. On my end, the front screen, while it's more functional, is a bit too narrow. So that's not. So when you actually do watch YouTube videos or watch other Netflix videos, yes, you can use it and prop it up as your small display that you can put on your desk, and you can just watch whatever on it, and it will still work. But compared to modern smartphones, it's way too small. It's way too narrow. There's not much that
Yeah,
you can type on the front screen before you make a mistake. And also because it's so thick, okay, it's very cumbersome. It's not a light device. Let me remind you. It weighs
yeah.
about the same as the old Galaxy Fold, probably slightly
I
heavier, you
I
know.
think the lightest of the folds that we've reviewed is actually the Z Flip.
Yes, that's also because it's much smaller lah, obviously, right?
Yeah, it's much smaller, and on top of that, it's not made of metal per se.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the Z Flip is actually plastic.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, dropping the Z Flip is actually a little bit scary because you don't know whether it will survive the drop.
Yeah, but it's not only the Z Flip that's a problem. Even the Motorola Flip device, right? Would
The
you
Razer.
really want to drop it? Yeah, the Razer. Do you really like? Can you safely
No.
say that? Okay, I'm going to drop this device and it'll survive the scuff. I don't
I
think you want to do that.
I think we've seen what would happen to Motorola Razer if you drop it, because Mr. Mobile actually had a video on it and it just
Yeah,
shattered.
yeah, and
It
it's
was just
scary.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, and your phones today, other smartphones, your flagships, it will survive a few drops, okay? Especially if you can find a good case for it. It will survive a few drops. The
Yeah,
problem with all these foldable smartphones, where are you going to find a case for?
and not only that, the cases don't actually cover everything, because a
Yeah,
lot of the cases that we've seen don't protect the hinge.
yeah. And what of like if you go out to buy a smartphone case right now, okay, let's say the Z Fold 2 in the shops, you're not going to find it. You're never going to find a case that fits.
I think the closest place you can look for a case for your Z Flip or your Z Fold would be Shopee or Lazada, because you go out, there are not enough people using it. Number one. Number
Correct.
two, you don't see the shops having the accessories for it.
Yeah. And it's the same not just for Samsung, it's the same for the Huawei foldable device as well. Yes, they have gone to the routes of, Samsung of folding the device in instead of out, but where are you going to find the case for that? So the question is, how would a foldable tablet work? Like, why would you get a foldable tablet?
And are you going to end up with more folds than a normal foldable phone?
Oh
Because
yeah,
if
it's
you're
definitely
going to
more
be
folds.
folding it 4 or 5 times, doesn't that mean that you're basically having a sandwich in your pocket at all times?
Correct. Yes. And that pressure is not good for the screen. Is
It's not
really
good.
not good for the screen. Yeah.
It's not good
The
for the
rumor,
screen, and it's not good for your health.
yeah. So the leak that came out, okay, says that the tablet that is going to come out from Samsung is going to have two folds, right? So it's going to fold in like two different places to make three parts of display. And at this point, if you say you want to have the S Pen technology and stuff like that, you can't technically have them on the Fold because you don't want to pressurize the fold mechanism. You don't want to pressurize the tender parts of the display because you can damage the display. It's still very fragile.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think Samsung themselves said that putting a digitizer into a foldable device is actually quite challenging.
It is.
And it's also why the Z Fold 2 didn't come with a digitizer or an S Pen.
And at the same time, they are so hefty. They're so big. Like, they're so thick. Okay, the Z Flip is an exception because it's actually quite dainty and it looks like, to be fair, it looks like a makeup mirror.
Yeah, it looks like a
portable
compact
makeup mirror.
Yeah,
kind of thing. But the Z Fold 2 is huge. Like, when I was carrying it around, it always felt huge. It is a head turner. Like, if you want to show off how successful you are and how rich you are, people are going to notice. That's one thing lah.
Yeah, even if you put it in your jean pocket, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it looks like you have an extra... No, I don't want to say that.
Appendage.
To put it nicely.
Yeah, no, but at the same time, when we look at foldables, even Huawei's approach to the Mate X and XS, I felt like it was actually more risky than what the Z Fold offered because you're folding it outwards.
Yeah, and there's no protection.
Yeah, no protection. And even when we saw the device and we had hands-on with it, when we pulled the screen up, you could see the creases like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And I think after a while, for me, that got a little bit distracting. And it took away from the experience of using the phone itself.
Correct. And we're not even like considering, we're not even considering which form factor is the best. We're just saying, really, do you really need a foldable device right now? I mean, the prices have dropped, and Jeevan says that it kind of makes sense now to kind of buy a foldable device, but you also have to remember when you're buying the Z Flip, you're buying a device that's not just 1 year old, it's about 2 years old. The hardware inside is about 2 years old. You have to remember that the Z Flip launches very late into the Snapdragon 875 platform lifetime, shelf life.
I think it launched after the 875 was replaced. If I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. So you're getting quite an old device. So while the price now kind of makes sense for a foldable device, do you think you should still buy a Z Flip at this point?
Personally, I think in Samsung's arsenal, they already have the S21 and 21 Ultra, which makes more sense
so much
than anything else at this point. Especially if you're looking for a capable camera and all-round device. Those two devices are actually pretty compelling. So, but at the same time, I think the biggest benefit of having a foldable would be that larger display, which I see coming handy for people like probably our parents who want or need the larger fonts to read articles and stuff like that. And it allows them to consume more content in a shorter time span. But at the same time, if you're saying like, oh, it's for people like us who work on the go, we work remotely 80% of the time now, thanks to COVID. And working remotely and from your phone, I think we would be served better off with a wireless display with DeX installed.
Makes sense, right? But what about the Z Fold 2 right now? Because while yes, our parents need bigger screens and things like that, nothing prevents us from buying a cheap like 7-inch, 8-inch tablet for them to use to basically consume contents and have two different devices that they technically don't have to carry all the time with them. The only device they need to carry would be the smartphone, which could be a lot smaller than the Z Fold, right? Even a tablet, a 7-inch tablet, you don't have to carry it around, and you can still fit it in your bag. Our parents can put it. Let's say your mom can put it in her shopping bag, and
Yeah,
really, do you need a Z Fold 2? and they're gonna complain about it anyway. They are.
the
Trust
only
me.
logic I see behind it is it's one less device for them to lose
Mm-hmm.
when they're out and about. But at the same time, for the premium that it launched at, and
Mhm.
even now, the premium that you're going to pay, 4,000 ringgit, you can technically get a A72 and a Tab A for that price.
Yeah. So does it still make sense? I don't know. I still feel that while the prices have dropped, if you still want the novelty, I think you can get it. Okay, because it is cheaper now than ever, and you're not gonna see this kind of price until the new Z Flip launches. Okay, and you're gonna see the older Z Flip going to waste and probably going on massive discounts just because retailers want to get rid of it to stock in the new Z Flip, obviously, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna see a new Z Flip this year anyway, or at least a Z Fold 3 this year. We are kind of excited for it, but at the same time, at its price point, we're really just wondering why don't they just release a new Note instead, right? Because they're
Yeah.
not going to release a new Note this year.
Yeah. Samsung's Note lineup is actually one of the things that I will miss if they actually retire it for good.
Though at least that's the kind of like the consensus from Samsung. They are going to retire the Note for good, but not before they launch one more, right? And we are still anticipating that. We're waiting for that. It looks like we're gonna get one more Note next year, not this year. At least not this year, as confirmed by Samsung. But yeah, we'll just wait and see, right? And I think that is all the time we have for today, for today's podcast. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for all your support. We apologize for missing last week. But
Yeah, it was a kind of a busy week.
Yeah, as I've said earlier in the podcast, if you do have any feedbacks or if you want to hear a different thing from us, do let us know from all our social media channels. Visit our website, obviously, to get a read up. We've just published the review of the Huawei Vision S, which is supposed to launch technically this week, right? And just let us know what you think of the podcast, of everything else that we write. Reach out to us on our social media, email us, and however, yeah. And this has been me, Darwin, and Jeevan signing out. Bye bye.
See ya.